Hello, welcome to my shop. My name is Tony, and today we've got one of these little odd pieces, little offcut with some neat color in it. It's a little Boxelder, some flame in it. I had to trim out a lot of punky rot from the center, and once you get a weird shape like this, you're always like, well, what am I going to do with that? So what I've tried to do is I've centered as much as I could this direction, the live edge portion, so we'll go for a live edge, and I've tapered it down so we'll leave some beautiful color in the bottom of the bowl, and a little bit on the outside to add some interest. But I think mounting it up this way, just between live centers, kind of centered up there in the middle there. So you can see we're kind of centered across the whole entire piece, even though it's an odd shape. And then centered it on the bark up here. So we'll see if we can keep some of that bark and that beautiful moss and lichen, and we'll just round it out. I think we're gonna go for kind of a flare shape. We'll leave as much of the live edge as we can, small base, flare on the top, just a little decorative piece. Okay, what I've got here is a new gouge I bought from a company called UF Sharp. It's an M42 Cairo, and it's easy to sharpen. It's got a slightly different tip than I'm used to, but I've been trying some different things just to see what works long term. I'm going to go ahead and put my mask on, and we'll jump right in. I have this set up for right around 1,000 RPM. And we'll just take some light things, try to establish a little bit of a shape and a place for a tenon. Trying to take off the edges, the corners here without too much trouble. We're just rough shaping, not looking for a perfect cut. The sooner I can get the sharp edges off and the corners, closer and faster I can go. I'm going to go ahead and stop here and just take a peek at how much of that tenon's there and how much isn't. Yeah, see, we've only got about maybe 2/3 of a tenon, which is not adequate. So you can see how far in we're going to have to go, but you can see how pretty the wood is. It's kind of worth saving when you got an offcut like that. And we're way off center, but that's because we're trying to keep this top up here. So let's go ahead and get a little more aggressive there. Again, just taking some shape and cuts, seeing what the wood's doing, what kind of tenon we can get. We still have quite a ways to go to a perfect tenon, but we're going to get some swirl in there, some white on that side. It should have some really nice interest in it. We're going to see a little bit of interest up on top. Really feels like the piece was obviously a funky shape, and to get a flat top up here, we're having to get rid of a lot more material than I really hoped for, but I still think it'll be a pretty little centerpiece. So I'm going to go ahead and find the round on that tenon. Being gentle with that bark on top because we want to keep as much of that as we can. We'll kit around and turn that in the other direction here in a second. Hoping that will fit in our tenon. Might be a little small, and we might have to move to another set of jaws. But I think we'll still be close. This is my ideal tenon size, and we're probably about 4 millimeters or 3 millimeters short. So there's a chance that won't fit in my smallest set of jaws, and we'll have to make some adjustment. But I can make another tenon up here. That should be closer. Yeah, that'll work fine. So we're going to end up having to lose a lot of that pretty color on the bottom here, but that's just the way the piece was. We'll see if that fits first, and if not, we'll remount it and we'll take it down to that spot there. If I can get it to fit in here, that'll be our foot. But from here, we now just need to get some round going. As you can see, this gouge, really inexpensive for what it is, and I'm really happy with how it sharpens and cuts. And it gives me a chance with a less expensive gouge to get a experiment with some different angles and cuts and stuff. You got one of your fancy, you know, prize gouges like my Carter and Sons or something like that. I don't want to experiment with different bevels on that, because that's a lot of steel you're taking away on a, you know, fairly expensive gouge. So having a few less expensive imports with decent steel gives you a chance to experiment with some different angles and cuts. As you can see, we still have ways to get in on that, but we'll be able to flare it out on top, kind of like a open flower. I think it'll be kind of pretty. I can still feel there's some flat here, but it's getting rounder. Yeah, just a little bit of flat left, so we'll be able to swoop around that pretty nicely. And I'm leaving just a lip here to grab the chuck, so we have a nice flat spot there. Still gonna have to shave that off a bit, but we're getting closer. So I'm gonna go what I would call kind of a little bit of an inside out. I guess it could also be called a little bit of an OG, but we're gonna kind of swoop in and around on this on the outside to get rid of that spot and keep as much of the mass as we can now in that space. So I just come in, handle low, anchor to my hip, just find where the bevel is, and then slowly run the handle towards the bedways. Once we get on this outside, and we're just moving bulk removal again now, up to where that bark is, because we're going to attack that bark from the other direction. Okay, we still have a flat up this high, but everything else is nice and round, and that kind of that tulip shape we're looking for. So we'll continue to swoop in and out towards that edge, so we can keep that. I don't know if it's a tulip. What kind of flower is that? I don't know. It's not a tulip though, but we're going for kind of a, I hate to use the word funnel, especially when I'm turning wood, but it's a kind of a funnel shape. I'm sure this has a real name out there that I'm just not aware of. So get up to that space. Just going to pull some of this material off gently. We're getting close to our bark now. So sometimes it's a little bit more like carving wood than it is like turning wood. You're really looking for a shape. So we have a flat up here I'm still trying to get rid of. We're going to have some beautiful spalting in here, which I wasn't ready for that. That'll be pretty. So when you look down into it, we're going to have this nice red section down in the bottom of it. We'll turn it very thin and let it warp naturally. Okay, I'm going to come down from the top now to establish what the maximum round we can get with a nice uniform bark and rim up here. So that live edge should end up adding some real interest. At least I'm hoping it does. I'm thinking it will. I could probably get a little tighter in there. Let's see. Remember to always spin that piece to make sure you're clearing it. And let's see if we can hold that bark on. Real gentle outside passes. You don't need to pull a lot of material off right now. And on these shaping cuts, we got to be careful because we don't want to take too much material, because we're going to have to come back the other direction so we don't have any tear out. I'm just trying to keep a little pressure on the tool rest here. I just use the tip of the tool. Hopefully you can see from that angle. Just using the very sharp little tip of the tool on the bevel to get some shape. And then I'll be able to take a look at that and see how round we are. I think we saw some flats up there. We're flat here, big flat on this side, so we're going to have to come in quite a bit to get to a full live edge, but we're getting tight over here and here. So it'll be a little bit smaller piece than I was hoping for, but it's still going to be a very interesting looking part. So as long as our bottom, our very base, where it's going to sit on the table, and the top are about, we want to be about 1/3 to 2/3 in terms of diameter there to keep that kind of drama. Just find a nice, easy bevel cut there. And then we're going to swoop in. We're moving the handle attached to my hip towards the bedways. Oops. What I was trying to do there, and I failed, was move my hand so you could get a better look at the cut. And you can start to feel when we're not in bevel contact or we have a lot of air. So then you just want to float that bevel at that point. So instead of applying pressure towards our piece, we don't want to be pressing into the piece too hard, because as you hit to these top spots, it's going to want to dive in, even at high RPM, into these flats. Got a big flat there still. That's a shame. That's a shame. But we are getting the look we want here. So we can come in a little bit more. We will come in here more so we get more of a flare, but I'm going to have to go ahead and establish the round on top. I'm sure there's a bunch of ways to do this. I'd love to hear from you. How do you attack little pieces like these weird offcuts that are just pretty enough you don't want them to end up in the dumpster or the burn box. I decided to come in at an angle on this top, so maybe we can get a nice rim on the outside. One flat, another flat here. So that, I think that'll work. So I'm going to leave this as wide as I can here. We have a little ways to go to get to that. And so we'll leave a wide spot here, and then we'll taper the top end to where we can get that live edge we're looking for. So we'll take a couple passes downhill this direction. Real slow, real gentle, so we don't lose that bark. One of the things I have been doing, especially with this wet wood, is cleaning out my flute every couple passes here, just to make sure that we get a nice exit of those shavings. So we're close. We've got one little chunk here, and that's the last spot where we need to overcome that. So I'm going to come up from here to establish this is going to be a hard line here. It's going to warp really fun when we get there. We'll make it nice and thin, and it should change shape pretty cool. Yep, so we just got to get to that line right there, and that will be our thickest spot, or the waist of our piece. Now the whole goal here is to be able to keep enough of that live edge to really add the interest. I think we should be close there. You get a nice crisp edge all the way around up here. So I think for drama, this should have more of a swoop in it. So we're going to come into this material a little bit more. I think that's going to give it the best look and feel, especially since we have this big dramatic hard rim. If we come in a little bit more and flare that, I think that'll give us a little more drama. It won't be too hard to do it either. So I'm going to start out coming in inside of where our flat for the tenon is. Establish a good cut, get the bevel in there. And we're going to kind of come in a little deep, and then we'll slowly rock the handle towards the bedways to flare that out. Look for a perfect little spot to get a cut going. Going a little deeper and then rock the handle towards the bedways, out to our flare. I can still see a little hump right in there that I want to get rid of. We should be able to do a little shear scrape, just get rid of that tool line. All right, and that's the shape I was looking for. So that looks pretty good. Very wet. You can see the water coming through. No tear out. Some nice chatoyancy in there. We'll still have the red in the bottom of our piece. So this is going to end up not being like the high feature, but it will provide us with a pretty cool look. Now, if I can get this to fit in the other chuck, I'm going to go ahead and bring it down to this point here. So I'll have a little bit more drama and a little bit more height in the piece. But not sure that's going to fit. So too wet to sand right now. So we want to get that thinned out before we go further. So I'm going to pull it. Oops, I made a bump, you guys. Sorry about that. So we'll take it off here and kind of give you a little peek. And that's what we have. So we got our, is that focusing okay? There we go. So we have the top up here, which will hollow out here. I'm leaving a nice thin bark rim and then come in at an angle and then down into the piece and a high waist. So I think that should end up being a pretty good looking, I don't know where I'm at here. Hopefully you can see it. That's a good look. Okay, I did a couple measurements and we can make that bottom tenon work. So that gives us a little more material for us to kind of swoop this in to get a little more drama and a little smaller foot on the bottom. This tenon is too deep for my small chuck, so I'm gonna have to flatten off a teeny bit of that material. And with that, I always use a small pointy gouge, which is just a Benjamin's Best, very inexpensive 1/2-inch bowl gouge. And I sharpen it to a 45-degree angle on the tip, and this gives me nice tight input to get into a lot of these tighter spots. And it's such an inexpensive gouge, you can keep playing with the shape. I'm going to go ahead and add a little dovetail. Okay, I feel good about that. Now, when we take a look, I now have this material from that little lip, which is where our chuck's going to seat, up here to kind of really accentuate the drama of that swoop. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do here. Again, using our experimental grind gouge here, I'm going to come in at a very slight angle and blend these two. And I'm rolling the gouge after I start my cut. We go up a little bit, and then once we start getting towards the area where we want our swoop, I bring the handle towards the bedways. And we'll just roll it in on your hip towards the bedways. And then we get up in there, we can shear scrape off that one little tool line there. See how that shape looks? It's nice, dramatic there. Again, it does look like a funnel, which is a no-no word. We don't use the funnel word. Okay, I'm going to come from the other direction, and I'm just going to merge that in with our step at the bottom. Get a small cut. Find your bevel. And that is close enough. So once we're down here, I'm going to go ahead and tighten this up for our face. And when I say the face, the area where our chuck jaws will rest, so we get a nice tight thing at the same angle as my dovetail. Take a little bit depth off of this. Can't have it too deep. Clean up that little thing. We're going to pop that off down there because it will not fit in the center hole. It will fit in the center hole. So in my jaws, let me pull this back so you can see what I'm talking about here. Not bump you too much. So in my jaws, I have this here. I have a hole in the middle, so I can put that in and still keep my little dots. So when we remount this for sanding or anything else, I'll still have a nice center point against what we're doing there. So when we reverse this on a jam chuck, we should be able to maintain nice concentric. So that's our piece now. And turn it around and haul it. Get it mounted in the chucks. Be right back. Okay, I've got it mounted back up in the chucks. As you can see, I put the smallest jaw set I have on here. You can see how much tenon we have in, and we're bumped up right up against the bottom of that to give it a nice tight hold. We ended up with pretty nice cuts. I mean, obviously no sanding or anything, a little shear scrape. You can see there's going to be some beautiful chatoyancy. And then our top up here is tapered at that angle. So we're going to come in from here. We'll leave a nice thin rim, come down to that section, and then we'll swoop down. I'll end up, after I finish this top part, I'll get down into here with a starting hole, little center hole, so we get our depth, and then we'll start thinning it out. Probably take quite a bit of time because we're going to have to keep scooping shavings out. Well, yeah, because of this closed rim up here, we'll be scooping a lot of shavings out. But anyway, I'll get you mounted up so we can do the hollowing, and we should be done with this pretty quick. So I know this is a preference, but I also personally think it's a best practice that whenever you can leave your tailstock in, leave your tailstock in. It will get in the way eventually. We'll have to move it. But while you're taking these tight cuts in here to establish our rim thickness, that's the time when you'd like to have that extra support. So nice sharp gouge. I'm going to be turning in at about 1,000 RPM. And first we'll just remove some of that bark material, and then we'll get towards that edge and start cutting it at our extreme angle. And again, I'm using my real inexpensive tools today with a bunch of different angles so we can kind of experiment with some different cuts. We want to keep this rim pretty thin. See what that rim looks like. Still looks a little thick to me. And it's going to look thick because we have a huge piece of it over here. So this is going to be the establishment of our thinnest spot of the rim. As you can see, that's almost comes to a point. And we'll be able to sand that a little bit on the outside. But I think that overall, that's a pretty good look. I think for balance on this piece, it's kind of a shame that we have this extra piece of bark here. But that's, you work with the thing you have. I think it'll end up still looking very nice and a little rustic. Now I'm kind of at the point where I'm going to go ahead and pull some of that center mass out here, and we have to pull the tailstock away just so I can get at the extreme angles. I'm going to have to be on this side of the tailstock. So I'd love to be able to turn this in reverse. I might lock this down so I can come in here and reverse to get to that waist, and then we can cut down the middle pretty easily, I think. But let's go ahead and pull that center mass out first. Coming right in the center there, little pressure, that'll pop right off when we stop the lathe and move the tailstock. Let me pause you for a minute here. Actually, I'll just slide you over to the edge. I got to slide the tailstock out of the way now. And that should just pop right off. Got a little piece there. Now I'm going to pull out my my live center here because it is as sharp as a hypodermic needle. And I do not need any elbow, or as Kirk DeHero would say, I don't need to be vaccinated today. Now we should be able to get our banjo over, set ourselves up pretty close to being in the middle here, but we'll come around the edge. Want to make sure we're clear, we're not going to rub on anything, and that'll give us an opportunity to come in from this other angle to clean out that spot there. Hopefully it's making sense and the camera angles we have in here are good for you. I'm working on that still. you should be seeing this video in 2026. I am turning this right now in the end of 2025. Usually it takes me, a couple hours to turn a piece and do the camera angles and stuff. And then I take it in and edit it. So sometimes I'll have a few weeks worth of material there. And other times I'll have a month's worth of material. And sometimes I'm like, oh, what am I going to publish this week? So I'm going to take this back over to the grinder right now and clean up that edge before we go. And I want it as tight as possible so we can really get a nice line in there. Okay, I'm down to under 1/4 of an inch right here. So I got to be very careful blending that corner now. And I'm going to do that in reverse with my 55-degree crown gouge. See how that blend turned out. Still have a tool line there I don't like. Definitely don't want to risk having the whole thing fall apart on us here either, though. Okay. I think that cleaned that up. There shouldn't be a tool line there after we get all of our tool lines gone. Got a nice tight spot there. I should have turned on the air compressor before I started. Let's get our measurements here. 0.17. Right at the very hip here, we're at 0.33. And a 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch, 0.28. So it's all within a few thousandths of an inch. This is now our thinnest spot up here though. So I might thin that top, but I don't want to come down here where it's, we're under, almost to under 1/8 of an inch, 0.17. No, we might have enough room for one more pass. Famous last words. I really think to get this to dry right, it's going to have to be thin. So all those little wispy shavings. There you go, 0.2. And a little flare, 0.21 up here at the top. So that's good. Now it's just taking this meat out down here. Oop. Well, no. Yeah, I'm going to go in reverse still. Turn it back into forward. Looks cool. Still nowhere near though getting that red in the bottom, which is kind of a key point of the way this is going to look. Obviously, you get 5 inches into something, getting beautiful shavings and stuff, but you start to get a little nervous here. I want to see what the thickness is of just that spot right there. I feel like that should be 0.27, 0.16. So right here is where we start widening out, and then down here we got plenty of room. So right here I can start taking a little bit more meat going down. Ooh, that's a little nerve-wracking, isn't it? Let's see what we get here. You get to keep pulling out the spaghetti. Get out the bottom feeder here in a second. Get that all the way to the trash can, save myself a little time later, huh? We're 0.22, still 0.226, 2625, 26, 24, 26 all the way at the bottom here. So we're staying right around that 1/4 of an inch, which is still a little thick. So we'll probably get out the shear scraper from Trent Bosch. But I'm going to get out Glenn Lucas first and see if we can clean that bottom up a little bit. I do have to be able to leave some weight in the bottom because of the shape is going to warp. So keep that in mind as we're doing this. We got a little lump right there. You can feel it with your hand. But we have got to be just millimeters away from, not even that, probably 10,000ths of an inch away from getting to that red in the bottom. There we are. Got it. And we want a nice flat bottom on the inside of this. It needs to be come to the cone base and then go flat. And there's a little bit of our red. So our red starts right there. And that, let me get my little ruler out here. People should use rulers. They're free. Okay, that is a 1/2 inch from the bottom. Less than a 1/2 inch. So we can only go about 1/16 more down to that space and still count on. So I'll use the bottom feeder to get us that red splash at the bottom. A lot of tool lines as it's warping, and also the grain of the wood. But there we go. We got our red splash in the bottom there. A little bit more dark red. I'm going to get out the caliper again. Measure that distance, 0.24, so I have room. 0.22. Or 0.22 to 0.25 all the way until right. This little transition here is going to have to be softened. And I'm going to try to soften that with a very sharp. Is that sharp enough though? You know, it can never be too sharp. Let me get out the diamond card, throw an edge on that. I want to just get a nice burr because we're just going to use the burr. So all I'm doing is taking the diamond card up the length of that edge there, because all we want to do is soften that transition, because we only have 17 thousandths, excuse me, 170 thousandths. It's a big difference. just an exponential factor. So what I'm going to try to do is just clean up that little edge right there. Real light touch. Let the burr do the work. Okay, and then I think I can get a real light shear scrape with the Trent Bosch shear scraper that I have. Down to that spot, fill it out. A lot of that is grain, but looks good. Let me also reset here, turn on the air compressor so we get a good blowout on this thing. Okay, I've got my Trent Bosch shear scraper set up here. So we're just going to take a real light pass, just see if we can clean up that inside nice. See, that'll do the trick here. Just put an edge on that. There's a nice smooth finish in there. At bottom we could probably get to sand on. Let's grab our gauge here, our caliper, 2-1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 2, 1, 7. This is the thinnest spot right here. The rim, we still have it at 0.33, 0.22 everywhere else, 0.20 at the very rim. So we're under a quarter. I'm going to go ahead and take a couple more passes with the shear scraper. And we'll come around at a little more of an angle here. Okay, blow it out with the air compressor. And that's a pretty smooth finish. We shouldn't have to sand much of that except for the very, very, very bottom. Let me see, we have any tear out right there? We got a little bit of tear out right there that will also have to be sanded. And it's still very wet. I can blow water through it. If you look on the inside here, look right here. Still a little bit wet to sand, but I think that we can still count on that. Yeah, I got a lot of water right in there. So I'm going to stuff that full of some paper towels for about 10 minutes. We don't want to put it in the microwave and have it warp and tweak on us yet. We really want to get a good sand in on it. Okay, I've got you up there. I think we can. I blew out a lot of the water, and I've got a little piece of Abranet 80 grit. Just trying to rough up, get some of any of the little tear out, or the fuzzy grain really. It's not even tear out. But it's so wet it just gums up the sandpaper right away. It should let us get it smooth before we try it in the microwave, huh? So what do you say? Should we throw it in the microwave or just stick it in a bag and let it dry and warp on its own and then sand it afterwards? Get a nice smooth finish. That's an 80 grit sand here. I think, just for the fun of it, we should take it over to the microwave, and I'll set up a camera over there and we can see what it does. But there we go. Very, very lightweight. My Lord, it's nice and light. And kind of a pretty shape. It's unique. When we turn it around and take this foot off, probably need to do that first. Okay, I've got a jam block up here that fits in the bottom just fine. Just one of my leftover pieces. We'll line up in there on the center mark that we had from earlier. Just give it a couple light cranks. Don't need to hold it too tight. And we're just going to peel off that center. I'm going to leave a nice flat bottom, which we're going to have to leave some meat there so we can sand it flat again, because it'll normally warp along that line. So if you've got a warp like that, it's pretty tough to get your bowl to sit flat. So we'll just kind of peel that away. You can hear it doesn't want it. It's doing a little cracking. It's a very thinnish piece. It's not super thin. And when it stops spinning, little nub there stops spinning, just like good old Phil Anderson, Shady Acres. And there we go. So we didn't get any cracks on that go around. Hopefully you can see that there. We will go ahead now and take it over to the microwave oven, and let's see what happens. Oh, it's not like this is going to a gallery or anything. Just kind of a fun piece to do. And if we get a cool warp and a little steam fun from it, it'll be worth the effort. Okay, we're going to go and stick her in the microwave. We'll start out with just 1 minute and see what happens. I don't think you can see anything in there, can you? You can hear it crackling and popping too. We'll see if it cracked or not. Hear that sizzling? All that steam coming out of there. It's probably too hot. I can still touch it. There we go. And she's steaming up. Not too hot yet. You can see got a No real change to the shape. Oh, she's hot though. So I'm gonna let that cool down, and I'll let it cool down for probably about 15-20 minutes, then we'll hit it in the microwave again. Round two. Ooh, hot, 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 hot. See that the material between the bark and the sapwood and the heartwood all change shapes at a different rate. So let's give that another 15 or 20 minutes to cool down. Okay, it's actually dry, but you can see it did turn oval a little bit. So I think we can actually hand sand that now. Get that bottom flattened off, and I think it'll be a nice looking piece. If you look at it, it sits nice and flat, and it's very unique. I think it looks better from this side, personally. I think that's the best side. It's its best side. But the layer between the bark and the sapwood completely dried differently. So I'm going to try to take advantage of that and not sand past it, so we can leave that almost like a bowl within a bowl kind of look. And the bottom faded quite a bit, but once we get a little oil on that, it should look really nice. So I'm going to go over and start some hand sanding. I'll bring you back when it's all done. All right, well, there she is, all finished up. We went from wet cut, green wood offcut, kind of funky shape, to this kind of cool microwave oven dried, open. I guess it's a closed form, but it's not quite a hollow form, obviously. Had to hand sand the inside. We got a nice tight line where the waist is. Bark all held together beautifully. We've got a nice shine on that. Pretty happy with how that turned out, considering it was 3 trips to the microwave at 1 minute each, after turning it down to about 2/10 of an inch. A couple spots where it's 0.17, but for the most part it's 2/10 of an inch all the way around. And kind of a neat piece from a little offcut scrap. Simple afternoon project. Anyway, I hope you had a good time. If you did, I'd sure appreciate a like and a subscribe. Those comments really help me out, and if you share the video, boy, that really helps the channel. Let me know what you think, guys. Give me some ideas if you think this is a cool project, or what would have you done differently. Anyway, until next week, get out there and turn something.